Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, the Israel-Hamas war marked its one-year anniversary of the initial attack on Israel last week, leaving tens of thousands of people killed. Dozens of people are still being held hostage, and the humanitarian crisis continues to grow. The war is happening 6,000 miles away, but it's hitting hard here at home for local families impacted by the events. Tonight we have two guests, one from the Islamic Center of Saginaw, the other from the Flint Jewish Federation. But first, we have viewer reaction from last week's show here on the follow-up. We talked about a Michigan Supreme Court ruling that opened the door for a higher minimum wage and a more liberal paid leave benefit. Here's what one of our viewers had to say about that when they dialed into our follow-up hotline.
My comment is about the show I watched tonight about tipping and the new Supreme Court decision. And I just wondered what was wrong with tipping someone who makes above minimum wage. I feel like it's a way to lift people up in the service industry. And I believe we need more people working in the service industries. I certainly believe in tipping them for their extra effort or good service. Like people are looking down on the people who make food, drive cars for us, take care of us in hospitals, take care of us in nursing homes, people who are doing the hardest work on this earth. And I'm offended. But thank you for your show. Bye.
And another viewer shared this comment on YouTube. They said, if a company, small business or not, can't afford a living wage, benefits for workers and paid leave, then maybe don't have or open a business. Seriously, this is common sense, people. Well, there you have it. Thanks for your comment and your call before that. Much appreciated. And we'd like to hear from more of you to help drive the conversation here on the show. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook. You can email us or you can dial into our follow-up hotline, as that one viewer just did, to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And if you'd like to watch any of our past shows, you can log on to deltapublicmedia.org. Now for tonight's show, we have two special guests. We have Imam Moussa Abdullah from the Islamic Center of Saginaw and Stephen Lowe, the Executive Director of the Flint Jewish Federation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. As you know, it's been a year since that initial attack, the pain, the fear, the despair. It's almost imaginable as this conflict rages on. So let's take a look at some numbers of people killed and wounded in the past year. When they put that up there, about 41,000 killed. There's the numbers there. That was the numbers from about a week ago. We also have some numbers about the hostages, the numbers of hostages taken. Those are some numbers. So, I mean, let's be honest. There are no winners in this kind of war, any kind of war. Humanitarian crisis is escalating. So I'd love to have you sort of both, kind of in your own words, reflect on this last year. You see the numbers. You represent people that may be in harm's way over there. Can you put that into words, what this has been like and what we're going through and what your people are going through?
Of course.
Imam?
Well, first I'd like to say that there are people who benefit from war, those that are in the business of war. So obviously we all don't like war. It brings a lot of casualties on both sides. But when you're being in the business of war, when you're sending billions of dollars to fund this war empire, then at the same time, we have to question our moral system. A lot of countries have pulled out. France has pulled out. Spain has pulled out. A lot of countries are realizing that they can't arm, this year-long genocide. So I do think that all of us are suffering except those that are profiting from these, exchange of arms.
Right.
My father went to the British Mandate of Palestine in 38. He left in 47. If you want to talk about Palestinians, he was a Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter has dual citizenship. I have family in Israel. My son and daughter-in-law were there this summer, as was my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
and flights were canceled, and they couldn't get out. And we were trying desperately to help them find a flight. I have other family there. So in Tel Aviv, where there have been missiles, So for me, it's a very personal and worrisome kind of thing. My son's wife's daughter was in the north, up by Lebanon. She's been forced out. She had a condo there. So it's very personal for me. I'm definitely affected by it.
Sure. Imam, can you talk to us about your congregation, the members you represent? You were telling me before they come from a different part of the world, maybe not so impacted, kind of like what Stephen was talking about. So talk to us about that.
Thanks for saying that. It makes you think about everyone struggling around the world. We were just talking before the show about Martin Luther King's famous statement that injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Right.
And so when I think about my community, who's predominantly from Pakistan, I think about the floods that were affecting that area and those suffering in that area as well. So we've come here to discuss, a conflict in one part of the world, but let's not forget the entire world: Sudan, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Kashmir, Ukraine. There are so many different, parts of the world that are suffering right now. So I hope that this could also be a reminder and a prayer for the whole world, not just one part of the world.
So people in communities all across the U.S. Are fearing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Both sides are feeling it. They feel threatened on both sides. You've got these pro-Palestinian protesters around the country. We see a lot of it largely on college campuses, but they're elsewhere as well. They feel they're targeted because of their cause. Safety concerns are growing over assaults on Jewish college students. So what are your thoughts on all of that? It seems to be escalating. It's not helping the cause either way.
I have to say that I think some of these demonstrations are actually hurting the cause. I have no problem if you want to have a demonstration and you want to speak loudly, but when it degenerates into taking over buildings and defacing things, and when I think a lot of people just want to belong to something bigger than them. I think they're idealistic, but unfortunately, I think there's a lot of lack of critical thinking. And what I really deplore is that there's no attempt to dialogue. Let's not just shout slogans past each other. Let's get down and actually talk about how we could possibly implement solutions.
Are you seeing some of it here in the Mid-Michigan area, in the area you represent?
I've been very fortunate that in Flint, we really haven't seen much of it. I mean, we do take precautions. I always call the sheriff, and I always have security, even at services. But of course, we're certainly hearing about what's going down in Ann Arbor and other places. And of course, people from Flint have students who are down there, and they're very concerned about it.
I think that where I agree with Brother Stephen is the critical thinking. We sometimes tend to think in binaries. Just the other day, I told one of my friends that it's not just Democrats and Republicans. There's the Green Party. He was shocked to find out there was an alternative to these binaries that we're being told. This us versus them, this right and wrong. There's a lot of gray area. And I think when it comes to freedom of speech, we're so fortunate to live in this country where we can speak our minds and not be afraid to be jailed or imprisoned or killed. And speaking of journalism, I just wanted to point that we haven't witnessed the amount of death of journalists like we have in this war that we're speaking of, in the Israel-Hamas war. 128 confirmed journalists have been confirmed dead by the ICJ, or the have it on my phone, the facts of the journalistic. I want to get my facts right.
Sure.
As I didn't know if I could take out my phone.
Oh, absolutely.
But I have it written here that these facts are devastating. Actually, the CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, nonprofit organization, 128 journalists, media workers confirmed killed, 130 arrested, 40 injured, and that's not including the schools and the things that have been. So when it comes to the protests, I think I can understand where the anger comes from, but sometimes we tend to label these protesters as like anti-Semitic when the Semites, that whole area, are, Palestinians are Semites, as Brother Stephen said, his grandfather,
My father.
father himself, Palestinian. Philistines are mentioned. So when it comes to this binary debate, I think when we say we want to ceasefire or we want the ending of the bombs, it doesn't mean we want what we perceive as the other side, because we're all really one, to be hurt or anything like that. So I just wanted to share that.
Sure. And you mentioned something about the morality of war, I think, Imam, earlier. And let's go there, I guess. There's a rabbi in Metro Detroit, I'm not sure who it was, who talked about the morality of war, saying, quote, "We are obligated to defend ourselves, but at the same time we have to work doubly hard to make sure that we never become a war-loving people, that we are lovers of peace, we hate war, and understand it's only a tool to achieve the peace we need, the peace we want, and the peace we deserve," end quote. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, and I would love to hear from you as well, Brother Stephen. I think, like we mentioned in the beginning, this ties in that no one is happy about war except those that are in the business of war.
Right.
And even though I'm a proud citizen of this country, I love America. I always tell my family that when we go overseas, I was mentioning in Egypt, they'll give me a price based on where I'm from. If they hear me speak English, they'll raise the price. But here in America, everybody is equal in that regard. There's a lot of things in the United States, and one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Beautiful country. But I have to call it the hypocrisy of this country when they're arming, they're sending 2,000-ton bombs, they're sending really dangerous unguided missiles, and call out to say that if you're funding that war, and then at the same time saying, well, we do think that we should cease the fire, stop the war, then I think the United States should lead in that. In the UN, which was made to give a land for the Jewish people, should realize that that there's some hypocrisy happening, and we should speak to that as well. So.
Well, there's a famous quote that the sword comes into the world because of justice denied and justice delayed. Mm-hmm. But there's another famous saying by a Jewish scholar, and it consists of 3 parts. Everyone's heard, I think it was the Nike, the third part, which is, if not now, when? But the 2 parts that precede that are, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? The second part is, if I'm only for myself, what am I? And the fact of the matter is, we have to love ourselves. We have to defend ourselves. There is one Jewish majority country in the world. Only one. There are some 50 Islam majority countries, 121 Christian majority countries. There are 18 million Jews in the world, and there are approximately 2 billion Muslims and 2.3 Christians. Fair is fair. If we're going to talk justice, we Jews should be entitled to one country where we are the majority. It's smaller than 46 states. It's 8,000 square miles. The 12 countries, Islamic countries that surround Israel, are 400 times the square area. We're just asking, the Jewish national anthem says, we're asking to be allowed to live in freedom in our land. Fair is fair. Let us live in peace in our one single Jewish majority land, and we have to defend it.
I don't know if you had any
if I may rebuttal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the greater Israel? Because I know you mentioned the part that's currently West Bank and the sides that are currently occupied, but what are your thoughts on like the plan to expand and go towards Sinai and the
Look, biblical Israel was much, much bigger than current Israel.
Right.
The United Nations promised a much, much bigger Israel. Mm-hmm. And then finally, Israel was, a very small Israel was created. I am not looking to increase the size of Israel. I mean, I think there are certain things, there's one exception to that. I mean, the rule of war has been if you conquer something, it's yours unless you choose to give it back. I don't think Israel should give back the Golan Heights. They were being shot on from those heights. But aside from that, any other expansion? No. I will give up any other claims in order to make peace. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't want to see any. I despise the settlers who are going in and trying to run people off their land. Despise them. So I'm not interested in any greater
I'm glad
Israel.
that you mentioned there's extremes. There's extremist settlers who are currently auctioning off Gaza. They're actually auctioning off parts of Lebanon.
I believe in the two-state solution.
Yeah, there's those extremists, and they have to be called out.
They absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said before, it is the extremists on both sides who are creating this problem. There are so many centrists, moderates in the middle who would easily, settle this tomorrow.
Right.
But the middle is being held hostage by the extremists on both sides.
I think where we can meet at the middle is this is the first time in history, because people think it started October 7th, but you and I know this has been going on for longer than that. This is a good thing that came out of this. Is the first time in history that people are realizing this history. And TikTok, and I know that the Congress wants to get it banned because of, they're not able to control it, but TikTok has spread so much awareness about what's going on, and people are now speaking up. And a lot of them are learning for the first time. You and I have known about this for years. So for all those people learning for the first time, they can easily get pulled to the extremes.
Sure.
So we have to give them that information.
And look, an important thing is that people have to be, it's a complex situation. And it really takes a lot of education. It really takes learning the history. And you can't substitute slogans, and expect to get to a solution. You can't. And there's too much sloganeering going on.
Right.
Yeah, people don't understand the slogans. They don't actually understand when they say, for example, they say from the river to the sea, that people think that's a call for the expulsion of all of the, Jews from there.
Well,
but
that's how I interpret it.
that's how you interpret it, exactly. But little do people know that before the Crusades didn't allow any Jews to come into Palestine. And when the Muslims conquered the Jerusalem, they actually enabled the Jewish population to live in Palestine. And Brother Stephen's father probably can tell us as well that Muslims and Jews lived in Palestine peacefully for many years.
Absolutely.
The divide and conquer idea, even within Islam, the divide and conquer of they've always fought. This is the colonial mindset, and we want to decolonize our hearts and decolonize our souls.
So what do you feel about the U.S. response right now? We have a long history of getting involved, providing humanitarian aid, trying to negotiate a peace agreement. There were developments, I think, this week. Any thoughts on what we can do differently and how it's going?
Brother Stephen?
I don't know what we can do. There are bigger forces at work here. The United States would like to have Israel enter into relations with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Dubai, because that cuts off Iran and Iran's alliances with Russia and with China. And let me tell you, the Gaza Strip had so much potential, beautiful beaches. It could have been a terrific thing, and if we could just come together and work together, and I think that October 7th was, in a sense, an attempt to sabotage what was going on with the relations between Israel and her neighbors.
Wow,
That's
interesting. It's very interesting that Brother Stephen mentions that, because right at the cusp of that, there were normalized relations between the Arab states and they fell through. They didn't fall. They didn't get to do those relations because of that.
And I think Iran sent out the signal to its proxies and says, we can't have the United States facilitating a regional coalition between Israel and and her neighbors, because that threatens us.
Alhamdulillah. And the reason that this is interesting, that ties together, because now that we're questioning this, we're questioning what's happening instead of just accepting it. You know, there were relations going to be normalized between the two nations. They no longer are, and now everyone's questioning what the next move is. And we've all realized the common enemy we have is clearly greed and ego. Because we all talked about this before the show, that today is the first time in ever in the world history that we have over 80 tyrants ruling, without mentioning names. It's not just one tyrant we're worried about, it's more than that. It's over 80, and this is an article that, you know, from the BBC, that they've done their reports, that, and we've never seen that in history.
There's an upsurge in autocracy.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right,
so that's something we can agree on, is that there needs to be a change, and a change from the top down. And I'm sure you guys are going to hear from Brother Mike. The elections are coming up. You're going to hear about.
I heard a little something about that.
Exactly. So it's a time of everyone's questioning that change, and hopefully we pray for positive leadership. We pray for good leadership to take us forward.
Well, as we're talking about U.S. response in the middle of a very divided contested election that's coming up in 3 weeks, I'm sure that's playing a big role in what's happening over there as well. We know it is, but we don't have the time to get into all that right now. But one area I want to show another graphic to the viewers and have you guys react to this. The numbers of sort of the aid, the humanitarian aid that's coming to Gaza, and you know where it's going. More than 1 million tons of aid has entered Gaza since the start of the war. 70% food, but here's the number that's kind of shocking. 90% of the aid movements between northern and southern Gaza have been denied or impeded. So it's not getting where it needs to go. So your reaction to that probably doesn't surprise you, but also you're part of congregations, temples. People want to help. Are you on the forefront of that at all? Has there been a response locally?
Oh, absolutely. Members of the Federation and our friends have made a lot of financial donations, which are then forwarded over to help with aid, whether it's food, medicines, toiletries, that kind of thing. I just read today that a lot of farming equipment was destroyed. And so, and Israel is a very agricultural country and exports a lot. So recently, one of the things that's been done is that the damaged tractors and whatever all else they use are now being sent over there to aid, because people will starve or they'll lose their living.
That's actually true. So with the nature of food, obviously those food trucks can't sit out there for days. With the heat that was happening in the summer, a lot of the food decayed. So by the time it got to the Palestinians and those who needed it, it was spoiled. So what we do is we send directly. Thank God, for internet and for being able to send things through, electronically. LaunchGood is a good website for that as well, to find certain families, to adopt orphans, to send some aid for people who need medical aid or need some packages. And thankfully, the whole world has come together to send aid to that part of the world because of the starvation that we've witnessed over the whole year.
And that's the thing, all of us, when we watch it every day play out, the war between soldiers, that's horrific in itself, but the humanitarian crisis, you've got so many innocent people, and we have a hard time grasping that, and how war could be done differently, and yet if you're sheltering innocent people in areas that are strategic to the war, this is a hard decision for these folks to make.
With unguided missiles and when those 2,000-ton bombs, a lot of those children could be confused when they see United States flag on there. They see that those bombs have the flag on them. They might think, does America hate us? They don't think about the politics. They don't think about the allies. They don't think about the history. They just feel like maybe America hates us. And I think that's where the hatred on the other side, because the worst two things you can have are ignorance and poverty. And if you put ignorance and poverty together, you get the birth of ISIS. You get the birth of radical, extreme individuals on both sides who want to exterminate the other. Once we dehumanize the other, we call them savages, we call them terrorists. Once we create another, then we start to see them as less human. And I want to conclude with saying that the genocide, is happened here in the United States with the Native Americans, and we call them the savages, and what happened with them is similar to what we see happening with the indigenous people.
I know you're not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
We got about 2 minutes, so.
Do you want me to address that?
Sure, if you can do it in a minute.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try to.
Yeah.
I am very particular about language. The word genocide came out of the Holocaust, World War II. And genocide requires intent, and it requires an intent to completely eradicate a group or a major portion. So 6 million of 18 million Jews were killed. The horror in Gaza is terrible. No civilian death can be justified, but it is not
It's
a
a Holocaust.
genocide.
I would add
It's
a
not
Holocaust. They're burning them alive. You saw it today. Check it today.
It's
They're
not
burning them
a
alive.
genocide.
It's a Holocaust. It's an exodus, and it's a genocide.
It's
We'll
not
leave
a
it
By
at that.
all,
genocide.
by
We'll
all
leave it at
means.
that for
We'll
now.
leave
All
it at that.
definitions. By all
So in about the
definitions.
minute we have, based on Imam, who you represent, and what you're trying to communicate to our viewers, and what should we leave it with on kind of your end and the folks that you're representing?
I think we all agree that
Yeah.
any death anywhere, and Brother Stephen shared with me that we both our faiths share this. Chapter 5, Quran and in Maida, one death anywhere is equal to death all over the world. You save one life, you save the world. You take one life,
Absolutely.
you take the world. We're both here trying to say no more violence, stop the death, stop the killings. We just want peace, and that's, I think, what we agree on.
I think we want to create a situation in which two peoples can live together in peace. They can both realize their national aspirations, and both can feel safe and secure.
Right.
I think that's what we want.
Well, I so appreciate you guys coming in and having an educated, intelligent discussion on a very complex situation that we all wish could come to an end and bring some peace. So thank
Amen.
you.
Amen.
And that's our show for tonight. Be sure to join us again next Tuesday night right here for the follow-up. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck a blow to proponents of school choice in Michigan, and teacher evaluations are changing, but some say not in a good way. That's next week, right here on the follow-up. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great night. Now, welcome to the follow-up after show. For those of you that may have watched our big show, our big live show, we've got some extra information to educate you further on what's going on in our community. Our guest, Imam Moussa Abdullah, the Islamic Center of Saginaw, is with us, and Stephen Lowe, the Executive Director of the Flint Jewish Federation, to sort of expand on the conversation. And Imam, let me go with there. We did try to have some good dialogue in the live show about a very complicated conflict in the Middle East that we're marking the one-year anniversary of the initial attack on Israel. So what else would you like to talk about in terms of communicating with our viewers and the community at large about what they need to know?
I just want to say thank you for all parties joining here, and for Mike and the team, the follow-up. We need to encourage more of this dialogue. A couple of years back, when someone drew a picture of the Prophet Muhammad and then there was a riot in Paris, the news agencies came to report, like, is this what Islam is about? We said, no, actually, we need to respond more like this. If someone draws a picture or does a caricature of an art, we can respond with art. There's there's nothing wrong with freedom of speech, freedom of expression, as long as we respect each other and we don't take it to that violence. And so I want to thank you for being a beacon of hope and a place, a safe space to speak about such conversations. I want to appreciate that.
And I know you agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need more listening and more thoughtful responding, back and forth. In fact, if I may, I have a daughter who works with a group called Resetting the Table, and they have a program called Facilitating Difficult Conversations. And we know people with their politics in their family have had difficult conversations,
Right.
and also in the area that we're talking about. So she's going to be offering a Zoom program. It consists of 2 sessions, and she's going to teach people skills about how to facilitate difficult conversations so that we can have these kinds of conversations. If people were interested, they could call the Flint Jewish Federation, and we'll let them know, and they can sign up for these sessions on how to do that.
Great. I know you have an event to talk about. We'll get to in a second.
Okay.
Imam, I'm going to come back to you. Those folks maybe not as familiar with the Islamic Center of Saginaw. Tell us about it. Aside from worship services, which you do, I know a lot, which you could talk about that, but in terms of social services or outreach, what do you do? Just educate us a little bit.
Of course, Islamic Center of Saginaw was opened in 2011, right on Center Road in Tittabawassee. When they opened, they had an open house for everyone to come in, and we still have that mindset of welcome, come on in, come as you are, to Islam as it is. We welcome all guests to come to the Saginaw Center and to learn what they can about the religion. And when it comes to social services, we do have programs yearly and annually. In Ramadan, we have a drive where people can come to the mosque, and it's a charity drive, and for those families that are in need. So please do reach out to us. Don't feel shy. A lot of people feel shy to come to synagogues or mosques or churches if it's their first time. Just come, introduce yourself, and we'd love to welcome you in.
And your membership is growing, right?
Yes, it is. It's growing. Islam is the fastest growing religion. Thousands of new converts. We've had just at the center, just in the last year, about 35 new converts. We want to figure out how to retain people and keep them coming in, but people have been coming in, especially since the conflict. I asked them, why'd you come in? They said the conflict made me question the reality. So yes, thank you for that.
Stephen, to you, I know you have an event to talk about, and I'd also like you to talk a little bit about some of your expanding social services.
Okay. We offer congregate meals, kosher and vegetarian, and we have a contingent of Asian Indians who come in and have Indian food with us at our congregate meals. We have Meals on Wheels that we deliver, again, kosher and Indian food. We also have transportation services. We take people to do grocery shopping or to medical appointments, that kind of thing. We have other social service programs assisting people as they're aging in place in their home, that kind of thing. You should always, and we're one of the few transportation services that goes out of county. So we're very proud of that, and we're also serving veterans a lot. So that's number one. My event on Sunday, this Sunday at 3 o'clock at the MacArthur Recital Hall of the Flint Institute of Music is the Daniel Pearl World Music Days Festival.
Right.
We know that sometimes we can't communicate well between words, but we have a common language of music, and we try to reach out to one another and make connections through music. So we're going to have some fantastic musical groups, a whole diversity. We look at jazz and bluegrass and classical, and it's $10. So I would urge you, if you want to hear some great music in memory of Daniel Pearl. His parents wanted him remembered for something good.
Okay.
So.
And those that are watching the recorded version of this, it's Sunday, October 20th, 2 o'clock. And also, we have a graphic for our viewers. It's your websites, icsaginaw.org and the flintfed.com. Those are areas our viewers can go to, right? Get information about.
Or call our office,
Okay.
810-767-5922.
Okay. Enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise.
Thank you for educating us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you
and
coming.
we all agree. We want this to end over there, and appreciate the work you're doing right here on the ground here in Mid-Michigan.
You too. Thank you.
And thank you, our viewers, for tuning in tonight.
Delta College.
See you next week.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.